Hello. I will try my best to keep this under 20 minutes. It's roughly a 10-minute match, and usually when I do commentary, it's twice. So we'll do our best. This is Levi Jones versus Jozef Chen at Polaris. I think it's Polaris 27 Welterweight Grand Prix. And we could just take a look at what they're doing. So, first thing, right, passing seated guard. I really think your best bet is to just blast a knee slice and punch an underhook, and usually that actually gets them. In the training, you're probably going to be a bit of a dick. You don't want to knee your friends in the face, so another option would be to do a cross hamstring step to force them to basically go into a split squat, like how Gordon says. Another alternative is to pull up their legs, which is what Josef's doing right here. I think the downside of that is that when you pull on someone's leg, you're anchoring yourself to their ankle. So I know there's a lot of really slick seated guard players. Jon Calestine does this really well. If you touch his ankles, he's gonna arm drag you. Like your weight is gonna come up towards your face, and he's gonna take your back. So that's something to be mindful of when you're against an actual seated guard player. I think Levi is much more of a supine guy, so he kind of gets away with this. So something that Levi does really well is he plays outside guards primarily. Sometimes he plays some reverse de la Hiva, but I want you to pay attention to his hand frames, how they're always engaged. And he's constantly grabbing and removing Josef's ability to delete frames, right? So as a top player, Josef really only has his hands as weapons to delete 1, 2, 3, 4 limbs, right? You have to deal with both of Levi's legs and his hands. And by basically doing a 2-on-1 grip on one of those, Josef is left with one hand, right? Because you have to exist on your feet, or you can be on your knees, which I don't think you can legitimately pass anyone on your knees. So we'll see what he tries to do. I think he does a lot of good things that work on a lot of people, but they don't work on Levi. And the general takeaway, I think, is he doesn't really delete Levi's arm frames, right? Which is the entire dilemma of trying to pass someone in supine. You see how Josef has to allocate both his arms onto both of Levi's legs, but he has nothing else left to delete this frame. So Levi can just basically stiff arm frame and just kind of exist, right? Like he's purposefully using his left arm to also pin Josef's right arm, which kind of somewhat prevents Josef from flanking over. But at this point, I would consider this very much like Danaher's J point, where it looks like his hips are perpendicular to his. So I don't think this is actually the superior method. I know a lot of people will do that, and they'll grab this wrist and assume, oh, well, the guy can't pass if he doesn't have his wrist. But if you're smart and you're a passer, you should take this knee and just drive it on their near side shoulder and pin them to the mat. That's something that Josef doesn't really do, which is kind of surprising given how much of a flank he can get. So I think that might be a little bit of an opportunity to pass. And you can also see what Levi does really well, right, is that K-hook. He's constantly putting Josef between his legs, right? Because you can't pass me if you're between my legs. If he lets Jozef Chen move this foot onto this side, then, he has some serious flanking power. So here, he switches sides. Again, right, his foot is opting to use as a frame. Josef doing a good job pinning one side. To pass somebody, you have to pin a hip. And then just being really annoying with the grips to just prevent Josef from getting anything done. Josef doing a pretty good job stepping on this leg, right? The Rotulos does this really well. I think the actual way that you get out of this is you shorten this leg and you pull this knee up towards you, and you change the angle of your bone. If you think about your shin bone as like a plank, if you make it unstable, like no one's going to be able to have balance in here, and they can't project weight into it. So I feel like a lot of people do try this on me where they try to step on my shin bone, but I find that if I change the angle of it, their foot slides off where they have to step, and that gives me the opportunity to get this K-hook back here. So I'm not too scared of it. It's pretty rare to actually get past that way. And you see, Levi kind of does that there, right? He gets his leg back. He's not just being like, well, my leg's gone now. I'm dead. Right? Again, fishing for the hands. A little dicey. Not really strong frames right here. He kind of has this K-hook on the belly, so he is indeed safe. And I don't have great solutions for people with long limbs. It seems like in this match, Levi actually uses his knee to frame the shoulder a lot. If you have short legs like me, it's better to pull your knee into your armpit and use your foot on their shoulder. That requires a lot of hip dexterity. Mikey Musameshi does this really well. And you see here what Josef's doing really well is that he's actually he's not like forcefully pushing and throwing Levi side to side, right? Like he's angling and he's framing this foot away and then flanking his whole body, right? Because it's going to take a lot of energy, and especially in Nogi, you don't have grips. You can't just grab someone and Toriando spaz on them, right? You can't just like rotate their whole body. So what Josef's doing is he's pinning and stiff arm framing with his left arm onto Levi's ankle, and then shooting and shuffling like a tennis shuffle, right? He's shuffling his body over to this side to try to threaten a flank. And Levi feels that, and he frames his leg. That's probably what I would do. This K-hook is a little dicey. I think it's going to put some strain on your LCL, but, you know, if you gotta, you gotta. And something interesting he does is he actually pulls into it, which I think is kind of nuts. I also am made of glass, so I'm not the best, you know, expert on this, but I feel like this is putting a lot of pressure on this bottom leg's LCL. If you're pulling somebody's weight into it, and obviously you have to have a counterbalance, so he's probably pushing out with his ankle too. But I could be wrong. I haven't felt this guard. And then Jozef, you know, forced to use his knee to try to strip that. Can't. This is very sticky, right? This is very Lachlan Giles, Levi style, where you just kind of connect your whole body onto them. They play a very similar kind of De La Hiva where they do this. Right? And Levi here just threatening an arm drag, right? So off that kind of a pseudo lasso, if they don't respect it, you could just threaten an arm drag. And this is the whole dilemma, right? Like Jozef is having a really hard time dealing with these double hand stiff arm frames. This is the example I was talking about, right? Instead of pulling this foot back into his armpit, I don't know if Levi's leg length is just really difficult to deal with and he feels like it's going to create a gap, but he actually points his knee downward towards the mat in order to get a frame on this shoulder, right? Because like, yeah, it looked like it was tough for him to get like his heel onto Jozef's shoulder. Right? Double arm frame. I think this is a flaw, personally, because you might grab here, you might frame here, but there's absolutely nothing stopping Jozef from driving this right knee into this right shoulder, right? All he needs to do is free this arm, drive this knee into the shoulder, and then with this, you can basically grab this lat and flare your right elbow and shift your entire weight onto this side, and you basically cut off their body. And you can extract your leg from their legs. It's very easy to pass, but the main threat to a flank in this position is not his shoulder. I think a lot of people are doing the mistake of thinking, oh, he's camping and he's driving his shoulder in. I think if he's leading with the shoulder, yeah, frame the shoulder. But you should be very mindful of this, because if you don't frame this, he's just going to flank really hard and you are not going to be able to recover. Right, Jozef obviously leading very heavy on the shoulders, so yeah, Levi is framing his shoulders. Some side-to-side motion. I don't think just side-to-side and waiting for an opening is going to be a legitimate pass on really high guard players. I think you have to like delete the frames because they're just not going to make mistakes, right? And then this is the iconic clip, right? He goes into the K guard, switches to kind of like a 70-30 position, threads the knee underneath, grabs the hips, butt scoots back, and then kind of vacuums Jozef down into this empty space. Great. It's very basic, like baby bolo threat off of K guard, right? All of this is completely dependent on Jozef having his weight. You see how he's on his knee there? That's the only reason why this works, right? Jozef's weight is on his left knee, which means his right side of his body is very light. And that's what allows Levi to basically lift up a leg. It's just the weight of a leg, right? And this K-hook here is not pulling Jozef into him, right? He's framing and keeping his weight away from Levi, right? So this is a frame. This is not a hook. It's a K-hook, but it's a frame. Great stuff. Right? Immediately traps the arm and then starts to attack the back. And yeah, gets pretty deep into it, but I think he makes a few minor mistakes. I think at this point, Levi was probably training with Lachlan already, so I have an idea of what they're trying to go for. And we can definitely see what their specific controls are for the body triangle and for the grip fight. So the key thing is when you're in this position, that the bottom player effectively wants their hip to escape the lock around your legs, right? Once they escape, they can kind of like flat back and scoot out, and there's nothing stopping them. In this specific configuration, right, because Levi does not have the underhook here, he can't pull Jozef's weight back up onto him. So the biggest threat and how Jozef can escape is by flat backing, escaping his hip from this lock, and then sliding across the mat parallel to the earth, right? You see Levi trying to lock it up. This control is so good. This is very, very good. Lachlan has a whole instructional on it on Submeta. I recommend you watch it. And for long leg players, this is really good. But if you're also a short leg player, this is also very good. Lachlan doesn't call it this, but I call it this. I call this diaper control because it's kind of like a diaper. So the effective thing is, I think a lot of people play with the body triangle and they wrap their right foot behind on the outside here. But if you think about like the Danaher system of pinning a body, right? You want to install wedges around their hips, but you could also install a wedge basically at their crotch, right? So with this configuration, you have one wedge here on this hip, you have one wedge here on this hip, and then with this, you almost want to cup with Levi's right foot into like Josef's butt. And if you do that, you effectively install a third wedge right here that locks them in place. I call it diaper control because if you've ever been to like a kid's playground and you see those swings that looks like a diaper, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're completely locked and you cannot move your hips like at all. And I think it's stronger control than just the classic body triangle from the back because there's a third thing inside of here that's preventing your hips from turning either direction. And then we're going to try to skip ahead because I'm talking a lot. Straight jacket, basic control, Josef's defending, yada yada. And then here, Josef does a really good job. He gets his foot underneath, right? So something to keep in mind is you need to actively club this foot into their butt. Otherwise, they scoop this up and they can like untangle your triangle. That's kind of what happens here. Right, so Josef is doing two fights, right? He's protecting his neck as best as he can, and he's trying to untangle this body triangle, which is why the back is so hard to escape. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Levi does a great switch. I think at this time, that is correct. I think that's the right way you should switch actively. You don't want the lock of your body triangle on the bottom because they can effectively leg lock you. This is where it gets a little dicey. He gives up that diaper control and he goes for one side. And at this point, if you look at his arm configurations, right, Levi doesn't have an underhook on either side. So now Josef just needs to defend the lock around his face. Yes, your face is going to get crushed. Competition is hard. But he doesn't have any underhooks under his armpits preventing him from turning. That in combination with this, you see how his leg is trapped now? Now it's stuck, right? It's actually really difficult for Levi to like follow these hips now because he doesn't have that third wedge in between Josef's legs. Yeah, that sucks. I would tap, right? Most of us would tap. Josef's is hanging in there. And then this is exactly what I mean, right? He's going to free the grips after Levi's arms gas out. And off that, Joseph's going to explode and twist his body. And because there's no wedge, right, Levi's left leg is underneath his hips. It's not between his legs. Because of that, he's going to be able to spin to his right and effectively get out into like a closed guard position, right? This right here, bam, right? There's nothing that was stopping Josef from turning. Also, I might add, Levi's a long guy. So like even if you have a body triangle, there is some space if you have like a tiny waist person inside of your legs to spin. So that's why I really am a huge fan of having your leg cross and with that leg in between their legs, almost like cupping. You have to have an active foot. Right, and then we're gonna see a series of guard passing, and I think that's basically the rest of the round, right? So Josef doing a good job stepping over here, doing some camping style. Levi doing a great job framing this this shoulder, his right hand framing the hip. I would frame this leg. And then this leg here is framing, presumably, his shoulder here. But I don't think he should frame the hip because Josef isn't passing with his hip, right? He's passing with his legs and his shoulders. So I would prefer to frame right here, right below the kneecap. If you frame at the ankle, somebody's just going to flop and drive their knee to the mat and they can pass that frame. If you frame just below the kneecap and they try to like walk into you, they'll just push you like a sled, right? Like here, this is already like so dangerous, right? You're flanked really hard. And then, we have some invertedness. I'm sure they're both exhausted. That was a really dynamic exchange. And then Josef's just spamming, row drag, might work, but this frame, saving Levi right now, right? So, like, it seems like Josef has an answer, right? He can do a split squat, eliminate the bottom leg frame, and he can do a row drag to eliminate this top arm frame. And with the flank, you would effectively eliminate this left knee, right? You would just out angle. But Levi's right arm on Josef's left hip is what's preventing those kinds of flops. You see this? Like, he's just stiff arm framing the guy away. Here, a little dicey. I wouldn't frame the back leg. Maybe he's trying to go for like a pendejo kind of sweep. Right, and then again, look at the frame structure, right? Double frame on this shoulder, single frame on this shoulder, and Josef is just trying to bury and try to pass this leg through. This arm is kind of negating here, right? It's kind of negating and pinning this hip, but I mean, Levi's a long guy, so. Right, Josef sinking down, trying to get like a lower angle. I think that works on shitty guards. I don't know if that's going to work on Levi, though. Then here, just dicey, right? Like Joseph stepping on Levi's bottom leg. I wouldn't try to accept that. Sometimes you are stuck, though. And then trying to swivel side to side. Like, you know, this is the eternal dilemma, right? You're a guard passer. You only have your 2 arms to delete their leg frames, or 2 of their frames, and they have 2 other ones to fight you with. So this is definitely a tough position, right? And you see how, like, as soon as he shuts off and tries to go on this side, Levi's already falling onto his left hip, installing this frame on his shoulder. And, like, if you go against a really good guard player with frames, it should feel like you're running into a cement wall. Like, it's really annoying. Right? Again, like, I don't know. The hand on the hip is okay. It's not quite deleting this frame. And I'm sure he's also getting really frustrated with Levi just, like, spamming grips on his arm, right? Because you feel like you can't go. And then, you know, he concedes, goes on his knees. Maybe I have to, like, pin his bottom leg, opening up, going side to side again. And, like, kudos to Joseph. He's, like, riding it really well. They both seem like surfers on a yoga ball, you know? Another row drag attempt. But, like, again, I think it's the bottom left arm of Levi here, right? It's just able to stiff arm frame. Kind of tough to see from this angle, but I would suspect that's why Joseph can't flank, right? There's something stopping him from flanking. And then there, I can tell he's trying to, right? This section here, I'm pretty confident Joseph is trying to blast through to the other side. But with the frames, right? This frame here, he doesn't actually, like, have the ability to pin Levi onto his right hip. Right, again, stepping, and this is exhausting. Deleting the frame on the leg, deleting the leg frame. Now you have to delete the arm frames. Right, kind of burrowing down. Like, he's trying to punch an underhook, but I think you need other means of dragging these arms out of alignment, right? You can punch this, but, like, you know, if the guy is able to frame your armpit or your shoulder, it's gonna be really hard. Like, they could bench press you off, right, basically. And, like, Joseph just isn't able to get quite close into the position he wants because of these stiff arm frames, right? That gets pretty close. That's pretty close. And then Levi throwing over for presumably a choi bar, right? But I don't think he has, like, the proper arm grips, right? You see here, this is in his armpit, and then Levi throws his leg over. Right? If this wrist was over here, completely different story, right? If there was a bend in his arm, kind of like a Kimura pressure, and you could actually, like, saw across the back of his tricep, and he throws this over, that's a choi bar, right? That's choi bar city. But because his arm is here, and Joseph is quick with it, he's able to duck under and go for that far side thigh drag. Now, I will say, I don't like that pass because I'm not fast, and when I try to do this thigh drag, it's not impossible for someone to use their right hand, grip on your wrist, pin it to their own hip, and then take this arm and punch it through here and basically mirror lock the shit out of you. So just be aware that that is possible, right? Like right here, if you're nasty with it and you actually have the hand pinned here, you can basically force them into, like, this weird mirror lock position. But that doesn't happen here. I'm sure slippage is a factor at this point in the match. Right, Joseph's just like, damn, how do I pass this guy? It's very, very annoying. Right, again, driving in. And Levi doing just such a good job with the frames. Sometimes this is dicey, right? Kind of far. But yeah, framing the leg. That's I think, the proper thing to do to prevent them from driving a fucking knee to your face. This frame, I know Levi does this a lot. I'm not in love with it. Just because I feel like a guy spazzing really hard is going to explode your knee. But, you know, maybe I'm just made of glass. Yeah, dicey. right here, wrapping around into like a De La Hiva. Jozef trying to counter. This is very Aaron Milam, if you search that. I think he was a Danaher black belt, 3rd degree black belt. He has this very funky style of passing on like shitty De La Hivas, where you basically go like that hip stretch kind of position. You fall down on a hip, and you dive under here. You could get a nice thigh drag to the far side. But I think against a good bolo player, it won't happen, or you'll get boloed. So yeah, I feel like that's what Jozef's trying to go for, right? Trying to duck under this leg or inch up, but effectively he's putting himself in bolo territory, and Levi obviously is a bolo connoisseur. Yep, Jozef trying to duck under, going to be tough. It's going to be very tough. Right, so something maybe possible, right? As Levi throws this over, if you can delete the arm frame and just throw your knee here, you can definitely do like a diving crab back take. I feel like that is actually something that is a little bit lacking in Jozef Chen's game, I guess. I haven't really seen him go into like dives for like crab back takes. I feel like that's a really good answer for when people do this kind of like guard retention, where they either invert or they high pummel all the way over across. They're basically exposing their backside here, right? Like you just need a crab hook here and you just throw your weight over here. It is a very easy crab back take. But I think Jozef actually does try to attempt a dive at some point, but it doesn't quite connect. Great example, right? Tries to go for double unders. Levi feels it. His gi days come back. He drives his shoulders into the mat. Mikey calls this C-spining, but you basically make it so like your entire spine is straight, like you're bench pressing. And in that way, the structure of your actual body is much closer to a sled than it is a ball. So your hips actually stay connected to the mat. And a good cue to make sure that you're doing this right is when they lift your legs or even like grab your thighs and try to do it, is that your spine is straight and you just move across the mats like a sled. You don't actually get like rolled, right? Jozef feels that and then immediately switches off to a different kind of position, right? And then again, like he's trying to dive in, but like these aren't getting deleted. Like his arm frames aren't getting deleted. And that's what allows Levi to retain his guard. Right? And something else to note, when Levi's framing, he's doing stiff arm frames. He's not framing with that shitty knee shield and then the arm across on the shoulder, right? He's not framing the shoulder line with just one arm, because that thing is so easy to collapse. You can row drag it. You can just like push your weight into the wrist. He's doing double stiff arm frames so that you have to like eliminate his skeletal structure. It's not musculature, right? I could have swore there was a crab dive somewhere in here. Maybe it's right at the end. Ah, there it is. Told you. Right? Let's see what he tries to do. Tries to go for it. I think the connection is a little bit far. Kudos. I mean, you got 30 seconds left on the clock, but ideal situation would be, you know, right hand on the actual hip bone, right knee actually slicing into here. I think it just falls out to it because his hips and his momentum moved out to the side. So you do a real crab, right? You would need to be posted up on your right shoulder with your hips up in the air, kind of like you're doing a butterfly sweep, but you want to have a straight spine. And then you almost want to like think about landing on them. Like you want to stack into them with the crab. And then I think that basically wraps it up. 4 minutes over what I thought, but well, there you go. Here's my breakdown. Right, the double arm stiff frame, very difficult to deal with. Gotta delete it. You can't just dive your head in there. Yeah, that's it. Well, thanks guys. Also, if you want more instruction that is way better than I can possibly articulate, check out my bio. There's the coaches that have taught me basically all of my game. Yeah, there's promos down there. Go check it out.